let's get started. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I'm very excited about this event, and I think this is a really interesting sort of networking event as well because probably um, you know people participating from Japan may meet some of you for the first time and vice versa. So this is really a new mix of people. So anyway, in this session we're going to have a chat, and I want to ask you start off by asking the really simple questions to give kind of context to this meeting. So let me start with some of the questions. Right. Uh, how did you get into the topic of this AI alignment and AI safety? You are known for being the founder of Skype, but you've been supporting this kind of research and activities. But why did you get into this, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my favorite city. It's very easy to answer it here because the guy is right there, Ryota Kanai.
He's a reason.
He's apparently first time he's in Japan. I'm so glad to be witnessing this historical event. When I was kind of getting out from Skype and looking for other things to do, and it was like 2007, 2008, and then I kind of stumbled upon Elias's writings, and he was kind of making this, to me, what sounded to me very persuasive case that look, the default outcome is not going to be good. It's going to be probably deadly, and like we actually need to put in an effort in order to ensure that the future will be good. And I didn't find any bugs in his argument, so it was like March 2009 when we met at Panera Bread near San Francisco airport, and we had like 4 hour discussion about where I kind of tried to poke holes in your argument. I just couldn't find any. So I was like, okay, and then I did my first philanthropic donation after that. So that's how I got involved. Another thing that I kind of immediately realized after that, after making that donation, is that one thing that I could be doing is kind of serving like a API for these arguments, because a lot of people were just dismissing the nerds in Silicon Valley. But I had like some street cred, and I could just like take those arguments and serve them elsewhere, and that's how, for example, the Cambridge Center for Study of Exchange Risk got started, etc.
Yeah.
So that's
everything started from the research argument. Wow,
from my perspective, yes.
A huge impact. Yeah. But did you find any flaw until now?
No, I did not.
I see. But are you optimistic that we can solve it somehow?
It's a heavy question. Doesn't look good right now, but last year I had this discussion with one of my portfolio founders who was kind of very, very depressed about having worked on something that seemed to have like relevance given the AI situation, dire AI situation. And then I said, okay, let's do like EV calculation. Like, what is the probability that the world is going to end because of AI? And he said 99%. And I was like, okay, let's assume that number. How many times do you think the world could be better? And he was like, 1,000,000 times easily. Okay, in expectation, your future is going to be 10,000 times better than the present. So that's also like kind of my position, that I think we seem to be living a lottery ticket. Like if things go well, they go really well. But like currently the odds aren't great, but we have the power to improve those odds.
Yeah. Let me move on to the next question. So I keep seeing you in Japan, probably like
Favorite city.
Yeah, but you seem to be like really interested in Japan.
めっちゃ面白い。
Yeah, but how so? How did you get interested in coming to Japan?
Yeah, let's see. I could give like a really long answer here. I'm not sure how kind of like valuable this particular answer is. I mean, one thing is that like I kind of literally sit between West and the East, and like when I kind of started many years ago, actually around the same time, I met Eliezer. I kind of decided that I need to learn a new language, and my friend Silver, who was also here, he's like speaks like 10 languages, and said that like, look, you need to pick like a language that is like very different from Estonian. And then I kind of said, okay, Chinese. Then I figured out, oh, Chinese is so difficult to pronounce. So I was like, okay, I'll pick Japanese. And then I read like a textbook, and that textbook had like pages where it kind of explained like how this thing is said, and like what is the like trying to explain Americans what how Japanese sounds like, etc. And I was like read it, I was like, oh yeah, that's like in Estonian. So it's like there's like a very interesting overlaps there.
In terms of pronunciation,
yeah, and that's like another hilarious thing about Estonian Japanese is that like yes and no, they're the same words only backwards.
What?
So like in Japan, yes is hi. In Estonian, it's yeah. And no is yeah. In Estonian, it's ei. But yeah, like I mean, that's kind of like kickstarting my love of Japan, and then I ended up on a board of a company that has Rakuten as an investor. So I started like coming here, and yeah, my love just as my kind of language skills have improved, as just.
But in your visit to Japan, like, did you consider some connection or potential connection between this kind of AI alignment?
Yes, of course. Like I mean, sort of like from personal perspective, again, it's kind of silly, but like I think there are like two special cities in my life, that are not my home city, San Francisco and Tokyo, and they are almost exact opposites.
Really?
Because like in SF or Bay Area, you can have this like amazing future-looking conversations. Everything else is shit.
Really? Oh, that's funny.
In Japan, everything is amazing, amazing. But like the conversations just could be improved. So here's my cunning plan to do that.
Interesting because I think like a lot of people in Japan feel like like we are going kind of behind all the new technology coming from.
I think it's correct. It's kind of related. That there's like a little bit kind of like social constraint that is kind of holding you back. But like I think in SF, yeah, the lack of. I'm not going to go there. But more seriously, I do think that there is like a bit of an unfortunate situation where kind of the main alignment centers, whether like the really kind of state-of-the-art discussion happens, are Bay Area and London. And so it's like they're like also like very correlated. So I think that there's like a potentially high expected value intervention trying to get like more centers started. So I know there's like activity in East Coast US around MIT. People are trying to get, but I expect that center also be very correlated um, to what happened on West Coast or what happens on West Coast. Then there's activity in Paris. I just talked to Simeon, who's here, and involved in that. And like, and if you think about go like farther to the northeast, like China would be very interesting to start, but like it's very difficult, obviously, to start something there. And then like Japan, Tokyo, and Singapore are kind of like the natural candidates. So that's why we're talking.
So it's like, in your perception, what are the like major players in this kind of AI alignment research?
I mean, the grand old man is Miri, right?
Yeah.
And Conjecture, I think they're like a new kid on the block. It's kind of fun to see. We had like dinner a couple of weeks ago with like Conjecture and DeepMind, and it's like when I went home and my wife asked like how it went. Well, it was like a bunch of 25-year-olds telling to a bunch of 50-year-olds like, how did you let that happen? So it's like that. I think there are like exciting new kid on the block, and we've been hanging out in their office quite a bit in London. That, Anthropic is doing. I'm an investor in Anthropic. Anthropic, like, I mean, they are experimenting with like very big models, which kind of feels very risky. On the other hand, they're kind of culture-wise. When I hang around in the kitchen, I do get feeling that they really care about safety. Then, like in West Coast, yeah, Redwood Research is one place that is kind of dedicated to safety, and then like a smattering like individual researchers. DeepMind has like a safety team that is strong, but it's kind of very isolated from the rest of the community, rest of the company. So it's for what it's worth.
But do you see anything happening in Asia?
No.
Not at all.
So like that's unfair, of course. Like I think there is there is research, but it's first of all I don't have like super high visibility into it, and I hope this conference can help somewhat. Yeah.
But what about the general interest or idea about developing AGI like in Japan or in Asia compared to?
Yeah. Like I mean, I think you're a good example that like you've been working on kind of AGI, but it's kind of more. I think one thing that happens in Asia, I think also like your endeavors have been a good example that they are like tend to be like way more interested in consciousness than the capabilities. And in China, I was in a conference in Shanghai, I think, a few years ago, and then like kind of like at one point I said like, wait a minute, you seem to be kind of completely coupling competence and consciousness. Aren't they kind of like two separate things? And then basically they seem to be somewhat confused. It's like, what do you mean? So it's like my kind of perhaps simplified view in about the view of nature. And I can feel free to correct me. Is that there is this intuition that machines will get increasingly competent until they get conscious, and then they're just like us. But which I think is wrong. So it's I think it would be great to have conversations about this.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'm particularly interested in the relationship between consciousness and intelligence.
Again, don't get me wrong. I don't think I do think the consciousness is really important, but I think it's just separate from competence. And one way of putting it is that like consciousness is a question about what a machine or what an entity, what an agent is. And competence is about what it can do.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to AI, we should mostly be concerned about at the first order of things. We should be concerned about what it can do, because that's going to influence everyone. And after that, we should be worried about whether it's conscious and whether it's suffering, etc.
Yeah, but maybe like I'm sometimes worried about kind of well-being of AI and whether they have any suffering. I don't know. Maybe it's unnecessary.
Maybe, yeah. I do think it's going to eventually we should be worried about things like that. But like, yeah, let's try to not die first.
Yeah. Also, if I talk about it too much, people think I'm crazy or something.
I mean, that's to be fair. Like one thing that is kind of admirable about this kind of consciousness studies here is that in West consciousness, among many other things, have become like taboo to some degree, which kind of happens in Western discourse every once in a while, that some areas get like just blacklisted, and consciousness studies have kind of definitely suffered from that.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can talk about consciousness in the coming days. Okay, let me go on to maybe a bit more serious question. So what do you see as Japan's role in AI safety in general?
Yeah, so I do think that like when I mentioned that like in Asia, yes, somewhere in China or Tokyo or Singapore, they are like leading three candidates, and they all have like strengths and weaknesses. And the thing that I like about Tokyo is that like you have, I just was at Tokyo University yesterday, 1870 something, 77. So it's like a 150-year-old scientific tradition here. So it's and like you have a lot of people. less so every year. But,
Yeah.
but like when you think about like AI timelines, that is like demographic decline is probably not going to matter. So yeah, like one reason why Tokyo is strong is that I think it is like has like strong scientific tradition. So when compared to Singapore, then like Singapore just doesn't have the people, doesn't have the scientific tradition. Although they do have like strong scientific institutes as well, but they're more kind of like.
So you feel like Singapore is maybe too small as a
Yes. That's it. Like I think the biggest weakness of Singapore. Whereas like Tokyo, kind of like if it could get something started here, that is kind of like on equal basis, whereas that would be like a major achievement because you have like a large pool of scientists to pull in.
Well, that's interesting because I feel like Singapore would be more cosmopolitan, so maybe it could be a good place for international.
That's true. That's true. So like Singapore does have a kind of bigger. Is a bigger attractor when it comes to international talent, but I think this. I mean, also to like Western universities, so in that sense, like they are kind of less marginally useful, perhaps. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm again, Singapore definitely is like in top three or if not top two.
I see. Okay.
I'm going to Singapore on Tuesday, by the way.
Okay, so the next question. So what time pressure do you think there is on solving the problem of alignment?
All of it.
So we have to solve it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of the cruxes in the kind of alignment community. That has been for a long time. That like what exactly? Like, there's so much uncertainty about how far we are. But I think that's just last year, the breakthroughs that happened last year and this year, they made the sounds like my good friend Gary Marcus like more and more ridiculous. So it's kind of hard to kind of remain straight-faced and say the things that people said like 10 years ago. Is like, oh, we're so far from anything remotely human level. It's like, no, like we, in some definition, by some definitions, you can say Turing test has been solved. They're definitely like AI-generated texts in certain framing that humans cannot distinguish from human texts.
Yeah, so I feel the progress with like new AI is getting like really fast. Do you feel this kind of acceleration? Yes.
I do, and in fact, like one of the processes that I'm kind of coordinating or discussing with some people is that what are the options of slowing things down? Because now AI alignment researchers in the world have like their hands full with like the latest, biggest models. They're trying to like experiment, find the flaws, find the ways to kind of like analyze them, etc. And yet, there's capabilities people I hear from capabilities people that the plan is to go like 10x and then like 100x, and soon like 2000x, and AI training experiments. And I feel like very uneasy about this kind of acceleration and throwing more and more money and electrons at these big boxes to see what happens. So like there's some increasing discussion about like should we like, try to postpone those experiments.
But do you think we are getting close to getting like real AGI, or do you think there will be?
I think it's a probabilistic question. Like, what is the probability that if you take the current like GPT-4 level things and kind of 10x them, which seems to be happening, seems to be in the plans for next year, and or 100x them, like in 2025 possibly. Like, are they going to be at human level? As I wrote in one of my short memos, I don't think we can confidently say, as in like that there's less than 1% probability that they're not going to be superhuman at that point. I think definitely there's like one. My own estimate that like every 10xing of AI experiments scaling more than 10x is like 1 to 50% chance that they will be superhuman after that. I have a lot of uncertainty.
But you think it's just a matter of skill, or?
So currently, the things just seem to be scaling. So that's in some ways like in a bit of a crisis mode right now because currently we don't seem to need like many major breakthroughs, and conjecture people can talk way more about that, and they have told more about that. So it's currently it's just like I think I said earlier, says like stack more layers, and you will get like amazing new capabilities, which is a
But
bit of a
if it's just a question of scale, then just more investment would lead to.
yeah. So like one way of putting it is that like currently in the current regime, building state-of-level AI is more of an engineering effort than scientific effort. In that sense, it's more predictable. So yeah, and that this basic regime lasts until either Moore's law runs out of power, which it will in like 5 to 10 years, or we stop being.
Yeah. So do you
here.
think we should consider like stopping like investment and more development?
Yeah. So people are already considering this. That like is it like a responsible thing to do? Just have like this
Yeah,
few
but
companies
it's
through.
difficult to stop it. Now there's more interest in investing into it.
Yeah. So like one way I think I agree it's kind of difficult to stop these things, but like as I say, it's like doing like 1 billion or 10 billion dollar projects is hard as it goes. It's like way harder if they're illegal.
So, but then maybe you need to convince some politicians.
Yeah, so there are some discussions happening around that, but like, yeah, I think there are also good counter arguments for not talking to politicians. So it's like, I don't know.
But what about more like technical approach? Like, is there? I see more and more like technical research on the topic of AI alignment than before. And previously, I felt like it was more about like very rough sort of speculation about what might happen. But when you introduced me to David Kruger, and I saw his research, and he was like defining things like gamability and things like that. So I thought it was like really technically interesting research topic. So yeah.
Yeah, so like in some ways there has been like a boom of kind of alignment research, like technical alignment research. So like people who have been kind of saying that like it's kind of too early 10 years ago to do this research because like in 10 years we're going to have like much better idea of what their actual tasks are. I mean, have to hand it to them. Like that's correct. Yes, of course we have like much less time now to do this work, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. So yes, and like many of the kind of world experts are actually in this room when it comes to technical research. So yeah, I think it's better to discuss about the state of the art there.
Yeah, I think it's important to involve like more like technical AI researchers in this topic. So I often attend some like AI safety discussion debate events in Japan, but usually like people from like science, more I don't know the science communication or like more like lawmaker type of people come to that kind of discussion. But often I feel like actual AI researchers are not so into this topic. So I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I think your perception is exactly correct. I think that has been also like the problem in the West that like you're a technical person and then you go like, oh, I could kind of like make lots of money by going to like technical AI capabilities research, or I can do this like new fringe field that is kind of seems also very interesting, but like definitely like I would be relying on philanthropic funds and whatnot. So there's always a kind of like some competition between those fields. But yeah, like the good news is that alignment research there's like way more technical research, technical challenges that are kind of concrete now, and also like the number of people who are getting interested is just exploding in the West at least. So hopefully you can also get something started.
Yeah, but what kind of responses do you get when you try to involve people into this research?
I mean, I am reminded of like one response that I got, but that was like several years ago, like 6 years ago or something like that, from a DeepMind researcher, was capabilities researcher, and kind of like came to me, it's like, okay, I totally now see that I really should be working on alignment research. that like this is the most important thing that I could be working on, but I just can't because like I get so much accolades and kind of flashy rewards from my colleagues and from the science community if I just push the capabilities. So like, sorry, I can't do it.
Okay.
So that's like just one kind of episodic memory that I have.
Yeah, but maybe that's more common for researchers who try to publish papers.
Yeah, exactly. He had academic background, and also that was like 5-6 years ago. So it's like I think currently the situation is much better.
Yeah, but I think in that sense, I mentioned like more the technical AI analytic research, it seemed to be more like respected in some sense. Like if you know, for example, maybe there are maybe many different uh, levels of like research into AI, but if some people define the problems and then formulate them as technically interesting problems, and then maybe there's more chance to involve like researchers.
Yeah, I think again, just Eliezer recently mentioned that like in technical problems, at least there's a way to be correct. In political problems, like not really. So yeah, like technical problems have this like property that like you're judged by the nature, you're judged by the reality. In that sense, you can better align the efforts.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. So, what are the biggest risks that you see associated with transformative AI?
So I mean, whenever somebody asks me that, I have to like kind of think about like how honest I can be. Like, can I kind of like, kind of like, um, yeah, it's not obvious, especially in this room.
Can we ask you to be honest?
Sorry?
Can we ask you to be honest?
Sure.
Can he trust you when you ask that?
Like, why not ask? I mean,
Yeah.
So, okay, let's put it like kind of more kind of euphemistically. I think it's very dangerous to be in a shared environment with agents that are smarter than you. Like many species have found it out the hard way that it's just very inconvenient to be co-inhabiting this planet with humans.
What kind of environment are you using? Just any
Planet, this universe.
Planet.
This planet, this universe. So like recently I had my longtime friend Anders Sandberg, a philosopher in Oxford who mostly lives in MATLAB. He visited me and we had like a discussion about like what is more probable, AI either evacuating the atmosphere, getting rid of the atmosphere, or will it grow like large radiators to get rid of the waste heat? Because waste heat will be like big problem for AI before it kind of like gets off this planet. And when it gets off this planet, then like almost all the energy in the solar system is in the sun, in the hydrogen of the sun. It's like 99.97% of the solar system mass, if I remember correctly, is the hydrogen in the sun. And the energy output of the sun, again, according to Anders Sandberg, is per kilogram is less than that of a compost heap. So like if you are building this like what humans think is a fancy thing like Dyson sphere, which also would kill us. Like, if you build a Dyson sphere around the sun, like it gets very cold on this planet. I think, and so like we're gonna die. But like this would be a silly thing to do because what you actually need to do is called star lifting. You pull out the hydrogen from the sun and fuse it yourself rather than waiting for the sun to fuse like things in a very slow and leisurely pace. And the reason why I want to pull out the hydrogen and fuse it really quickly is because I want to get to the edge of the universe really quickly because that thing is expanding. I mean, and I could go on and on because like ultimately what you want to do is and my correct me here, is that you want to stabilize the universe. My co-founder at the Cambridge Center, Martin Rees, he has apparently this paper that in order for the universe to stop expanding, you need to make it 3 times dense. You need to pull in the galaxies, so the gravitational force would counteract the expansion force. And the reason why we want to do that, again according to Anders Sandberg, is that you can do exponentially more computation, and it's very very likely that this thing will be interested in computation because humans already are. And computation seems to be like a universal currency in some sense. If you wait, so like currently the universe, the Big Bang just happened. So the universe is super hot right now. It's 2.7 kelvins. Apparently, if you wait enough for this thing to go to like 0.27, like 10 times more cooled, you can do 10 times more computation if you're thermodynamically limited. So like these are my concerns. Like they're not concerns about AI, as Elias says, AI might say a swear. They're like they literally might kind of annihilate this solar system in order to get to the rest of the universe, and that might happen like in 5 years.
In 5 years.
I mean, it might. I don't know. It's unlikely in 5 years, but like, is it less than 1% likely? I don't know.
That's interesting. I didn't know you can stop the expansion of the universe.
Yeah, and Anders Sandberg is writing like a book about this, about like, how to divert galaxies. Apparently, you can do it using like massive aluminium foils and the sort of like radiation pressure. And it sounds really silly, but he's in MATLAB, so he has numbers to back it up.
Yeah, but I think this kind of assumes that this like super intelligent AI has some sort of like instinct for self-preservation or something.
Yeah. So that's like a very typical kind of like response people have. Is like first reaction is that like well, it can't do it, can it? And then like you point out like yes, it can. Like, there's no law of physics. Then you go like, but why would it? Is the second question that you get. And yeah, I mean there are people in this room who are much better at answering this, but the other point is that like, I think Stuart Russell puts it like you can't fetch the coffee if you're dead. So like whatever goal it has, if it can analyze what happens in the future if it's dead versus what happens if it's not dead, and if it can compare those outcomes as some kind of numeric utility function or whatever, then you can see like, okay, in order to fetch the coffee, I really should avoid falling into this hole because then I would not be able to.
Yeah.
And so to humans, especially if you're Steven Pinker, it appears as this like some kind of like masculine self-preservation effect, instinct, but no, it's just a completely instrumental. Like all agents, not all agents, but like almost all agents would have it like almost by accident.
So yeah, but I think to work on AI alignment, I think it's also meaningful to directly study AGI. Do you think that's recommended, or do you think we should somehow stop any AGI research?
Yeah, so I don't think it should like completely stop, but I think it's kind of Scott Alexander recently wrote this essay in response to OpenAI's planning for AGI and beyond blog post, where he just pointed out that in order to be consistent, people who argue that we need to like build these larger models in order to do safety research, they should basically pace their releases according to the sort of speed at which safety research can catch up, and like sort of the society that they're trying to inoculate is also kind of adjusting to the new situation, rather than just like kind of releasing one thing, then like seeing the shockwave and then releasing another thing and kind of starting a new shockwave before the old one dissipates. So I do think that it's kind of valuable to slow things down to a point where it's kind of society and alignment research can handle it.
Next question. Yeah. So, like, we often talk about AI safety, but how is AI alignment different from AI safety? So,
I mean, I'm somewhat confused myself. These are like the terms that kind of tend to change in meaning. Yeah, like my own kind of definition, and I've seen definitions that are very different. So it's like just, yeah, for what it's worth. Like I think AI alignment for me has been this like overarching uh, uh, theme of how do you make AI be interested in doing good things from human perspective. I had like now in 2011, I think I was in Hong Kong with one famous AGI researcher back then, and he said that, Jaan, what you're doing is completely pointless because like once we have AIs, than us, like we would be like rabbits. Like for us to predict what they're going to do is just completely. We're not going to be able to predict anything that they will be doing. Just like rabbits cannot predict what we are going to do. And my question was like, wait a minute, why are you interested? Why are you actively involved in a project to randomize the future? Why do you want why do you want to make it unpredictable? Shouldn't you want to make it good? And so like my point is that yeah, if you are trying to build AI without thinking about what it's going to do, you're effectively making the future random. Whereas like if you're trying to build aligned AI, you are at least have some claim that you're trying to build a good future, and this good is like according to human values or values that we should have if we were smarter. So that's alignment. AI safety is like a more perhaps like more engineering or like thing where you also includes things like trying to not build very powerful AIs, trying to constrain them in some ways that make them kind of controllable.
but I encountered more and more the term alignment in this context, but I think
It seems like a more longer term for me, but
yeah, but from my Japanese perspective, it's a very unusual word. So it's I, when people hear AI alignment, it, it's a, it's a bit unclear
Really?
whether what it actually means. Like, yeah, because alignment is like you're not just aligning things, but I don't know if there would be other.
Can you say more like why it's unclear? What does it connotate with?
Well, the first thing is English, but it's really,
It's a more
yeah,
more rare word.
Yeah, but safety is a like simple concept, right?
Sure. That's
But
fair.
alignment is like maybe alignment of values and ethics. So, but
Mhm.
that kind of concept feels like more abstract.
Yeah, I think it's kind of more. I mean, before we had alignment, we had like friendly AI, right? So that's like super. So I guess like this alignment is like a more respectable sounding name for for building friendly AI. I think you can still use that term. It's easier.
Friendly
Yeah.
AI is more intuitively understandable. But,
There you go. A lesson in global communication.
yeah, but I don't know. Like when I try, so one of the goals here is to make this field more popular in among Japanese researchers. So, but if I just mention AI alignments, maybe a lot of people just don't get the idea. But I don't know. We cannot easily change the term. But
Yeah, I think that's
just an observation.
I think it's definitely like. So it's sort of like a case in point that like currently we have Silicon Valley and London. So it's like these all sorts of like semantic connotations, etc. They might have effects that are hard to foresee from within those cultures.
We've got time for one or two more questions.
Okay, so yeah, just one final, maybe most relevant question. So So maybe I already asked kind of related question, but what kind of roles do you expect from the Japanese researchers in AI alignment research?
My sort of wet dream would be to have people from Japan who are capable enough to participating in the discourse that is currently happening in West, in London and Bay Area. So like one example, like one concrete example would be that if there would be people here who would be able to post on places like Alignment Forum, which is kind of a global forum currently, where these kind of discussions happen in a way that this kind of will get engagement. And then, like, of course, ideally they would be not just kind of absorbed into the Western culture, but they would kind of have their own points and their own kind of viewpoint, own framing and things.
Yeah, I feel, as you said, like in Japan, there are people interested in AGI and maybe consciousness or maybe more like brain inspired approach, or also maybe embodiment based approach. And I think those perspectives may have like more cultural root in Japan,
Yes.
and so they may be able to provide kind of new ideas into this community.
Indeed, and again, the Alignment Forum is just like a proxy, something that comes to mind when that is like something measurable. If people start posting and engaging there that are not in. I mean, we already have like kind of like smattering of researchers all over the world, so it's not just London and London and Bay Area, but like when it comes to kind of groups of people, organizations, they tend to be in those two centers, and yes, so being able to post on Alignment Forum is like a one threshold that it would be great to have.
So
People
maybe
exceed.
hopefully after this event, like a lot of people from Japan start posting on the Alignment Forum.
Yeah, and then being able to post on the level where people could comment and engage.
But can we use kind of AI to kind of translate at least in English?
I mean, there is like a more general question, like to what degree can we use AI when it comes to solving the problem with AI? And like there's actually a big crux in AI alignment community.
Jerry, I got the impression like in Japan, like there are a lot of people with interesting ideas, but maybe actually there's a language barrier, and so they hesitate to post.
Yeah, translation seems to be mostly solved now. I think. So like that might help.
So hopefully you find interesting talents in this meeting. Coming to this. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for coming, everyone.